last video we talked about celebrating the small mundane things in life. However, today we'll be shifting gears a little bit because February is full of big things. First and foremost, my parents are coming to visit. My mum, my dad and my auntie are here for the weekend and I am so excited. I'm very close to my family, I've always been, and the stability of these relationships has really shaped who I am as a person, as in it allows me to be bold and courageous in other facets of my life, such as moving to the UK at 17 years old, because I always have my family to fall back on and I feel supported unconditionally. Now, living this far away from them is not ideal. It's quite hard actually. Just because you're not around or you're not close by, you end up missing small moments of family life, like people's birthdays or a random family Sunday lunch, moments I wish I would have been there for. However, it's not all downsides, because having them visit means that we all take time off work and we prioritize time together, which means that we have great stints of quality time, which is incredible. Now, these stints tend to be either in London or when I go back home, even though we have branched out a little bit. I met Mum in Brussels once because she was there for work, and last year we all met in Italy so that we had our summer holidays together, which was lovely. Obviously, these weekends and these holidays are great highlights of my year and I really enjoy them. Now, my parents and my auntie have probably been to London at least 10 times since I moved to the UK, so we have the perfect weekend in London down to a science. First of all, you must go to a West End show. I don't care what anyone says, it's just a necessity. This time we have tickets for The Devil Wears Prada, which is a new show, and the music's by Elton John. Speaking of Elton John, alongside Hans Zimmer, he also composed the music for The Lion King, which is by far the most important musical to start with. So if I had to create a guide to West End shows, for sure I would start with The Lion King. The costuming is very impressive, the music is very grandiose, and the story pulls on your heartstrings, so it has every ingredient necessary to make for a memorable night, which is what you want out of a trip to the theatre. After watching The Lion King, I feel like there's three pathways to go. The classics, which would be Phantom of the Opera, Wicked, Les Mis. Then there's the modern classics, I would say, which is more like Six the Musical and Hamilton. And then there's the fun ones, which don't tend to be showing all the time, such as Mamma Mia, The Book of Mormon, Mean Girls, Dear Evan Hansen, all of those that tend to be more temporary. Now, if I had to make a list of the top 5, obviously The Lion King, we just talked about it, but then I would put Hamilton, Les Mis, Six the Musical as the top 3, and then Mamma Mia as one of the best jukebox musicals there is. Jukebox musicals are not my favorite. Obviously, the music is not made for the musical, so it doesn't match as well. Mamma Mia and ABBA go together very well, so I think it's a great combination. It's just very fun and light-hearted, and I had a great time when I went to watch it. Step number 2 to a great weekend in London is a tea. London is a very walkable city, but it's also very cold, which means at some point in the middle of your afternoon when it gets like to 4 o'clock, everyone's a bit cold and needs to sit down and have a hot beverage. Now, coffee culture, sitting down and having a coffee, doesn't quite exist in London, especially in central London. Most of the coffee shops are grab and go, like a Pret. So I think this is where the tea rooms come in. It's delightful. You sit down for a tea, some scones, delightful. Now, most of the tea rooms that I used to be obsessed with have closed. I used to love one outside of Harrods, no longer exists. They used to have the best matcha ice cream. Somehow during the pandemic they have closed. So my parents and I find ourselves very often just at Fortnum and Mason, not in the afternoon tea space. They have a more casual room, which is, I believe, their ice cream shop, and they also have loose leaf tea and they have scones. Delicious. It is just a great break. Now, this weekend my parents are also gonna go to the Savoy for afternoon tea for 2, but that was a Christmas gift, so I don't think that's a necessity on what to do in London in a weekend. Now we're on to step number 3. I love a morning at a museum, and London has such great free options. The Science Museum, the Natural History, etc. Now, there's something to be said about the beauty of a temporary exhibit. First of all, they are much smaller than the permanent exhibit of a museum, which means they take a lot less time and there's a lot less of like walking around and not knowing where to go. On top of that, temporary exhibits tend to be appreciated as a standalone piece, so there's nothing wrong about going and just seeing the temporary exhibit. They tend to tell you a story and give you context that I find really helpful because I don't know much about history or fashion or any of the topics that I go to museums for. So I really appreciate when I know what I'm looking at and there's a beginning, a middle and an end of a thesis that somebody's trying to defend ultimately. This week we're going to visit Vogue Inventing the Runway, which is showing at the Light Room in King's Cross. Now, step number 4 is food. Now, London has so much to offer in terms of food. You can get almost anything. Now, without a doubt, my dad will be asking for the soup with pasta and egg, which is his way of saying he wants ramen. So for sure, we'll be getting some ramen. At home, we get very little variety in Asian food. I never tried ramen before moving to the UK. I never tried Vietnamese food, bao buns. Like, so much of it was a novelty. It's all about trying new foods. I just love having them here.
Eu estou meio disruptiva, adoro fazer coisas giras contigo. E adoro conhecer sítios novos giros também.
Marks the beginning of the competition season in cheerleading, which is overwhelming to say the least. In the UK, season starts right after tryouts, so in August, September, where you've been put in a new team, where your goal is to focus on your technique work, stunt with as many people as possible, upskill as much as possible until the choreography is set. Once choreo is done, which is about December, you're very likely to just start getting ready for comp. When you come back in January, you know you're going to start full out. This is when I question myself every time, like, why do I do this support competitively? I could do this just for fun. What am I doing? And then January to February, you start doing full out. Your fitness gets better, and in February you start competing all the way to July. Now, there have been 2 main feelings that marked this first comp of February, which is nostalgia and stress. Legacy is always nostalgic for me because it was my first ever cheer competition, and this year even more because the university divisions and the all-star were all together, so I could see people walking around with a Titans uniform, and it's just so nostalgic because the 2 main takeaways I had from uni, obviously besides the degree, were the friendships I made and falling in love with this sport, or even the ability to try the sport that I had never tried before, and both of them felt very present on Saturday at Legacy, so it's just wonderful. Even though nostalgia is a very warm and fuzzy feeling, before performing I was feeling very stressed. Now, a little bit of nerves is good so that your adrenaline is up to carry you through, but too much stress, you just end up in your head and making silly mistakes. It's not ideal. Now, I wasn't stressed about the choreo or the skills in particular. In the 2 weeks ahead of competition, I trained 10 times, so I knew I had done what I could. However, the logistics of it all was really stressing me out. When am I gonna fake tan? When am I gonna pack food? What am I gonna eat? And at what time? To add to this, our meet time was super early and we were only competing after lunchtime, so I knew I was gonna have to get ready at the arena, which I don't love, and we have a new uniform, which I hadn't tried on, so all of these silly details were really stressing me out. We got new uniforms this week. They look so good. How sparkly is that? That is so good. Look at the sleeves and they're backless. So good. And look at the skirt. stunning, stunning, stunning. And for this week at comp, I'm going to be filling in for Revo as well, which means I'm going to be wearing the Revo uniform, which is just, it's even better. Sparkles everywhere. The feeling of competing, performing on the mat has really changed for me in the last couple of years. I used to black out and fully rely on muscle memory, but now it is very different. As of last season, I feel very present. I can see the judges, feel the crowd. I can hear myself breathe. It's almost like everything is happening in slow motion. And it's quite funny because there's a video of me halfway through the pyramid, so almost done with the routine, where I'm done with the hard bit of the routine, let's say, and I'm just hand in hands with another flyer and she's doing a forward roll and I'm just like, I can see that I'm so relaxed now. The relief you feel once you've competed, as well as the accomplishment when you're watching playback and it was a good run, there's just nothing like it. My team had an amazing run. We had a couple of things watered down, but it was definitely worth it because we looked super clean. And I also filled in on Revo, so technically it was also my level 6 debut. And it was a win from both teams, so a big fat slay.